Welcome back to Recovery on Screen. Today we're going to deconstruct a fantastic film about addiction recovery called Rachel Getting Married. It's got some of the most cringe-worthy arguments about recovery that you've ever heard, but also some of the most vital. That's coming up right now.
You don't hate.
Dad, don't tell me what I don't hate. I hate the lies. I mean, she lied in rehab.
What do you mean she lied?
I mean, she lied
Rachel.
to the people who were working with her, who were trying to help her. Dad, she lies to everybody.
Where is she now?
Where am I now, Dad?
Oh, God.
Rachel!
We're in here, Kim.
Thanks for abandoning me. I had to take a taxi.
Hey, welcome back. I have a special guest today. I'm really excited to have Bonnie Kimpling of Above and Beyond Recovery Center in Chicago joining me to talk about one of her favorite films about addiction recovery called Rachel Getting Married. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming to the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ted.
Oh, cool. Listen, why don't we start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing at Above and Beyond and how movies about addiction recovery kind of plays into that?
Well, I am a senior counselor at Above and Beyond in Chicago, and we are doing Addicted in Film in afternoons on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. And we show a movie on addiction and or recovery, and then we discuss the film afterwards, and it's been a lot of fun. We'll be watching a movie, and you'll hear people go, throw it out the window, coaching the people on screen and stuff. And people have really seemed to get a lot out of it and been able to identify on multiple levels.
Bonnie, that's so wonderful to hear. I wrote the book hoping that people would use it in a very practical way to help them with their ongoing recovery challenges and to get out of whatever they're in and find greener pastures. So that is completely lovely thing to hear. So thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. You're the first recovery center in the United States to do that. So kudos to Above and Beyond, to Dan Hostetler, and to you for kind of taking it under your wing and running with it. I think it's just terrific. So Rachel Getting Married, like I had seen this film a long, long time ago, and I don't think it really made that much of an impression on me. But then in rewatching it, I saw everything that had to be seen in this film, and it has so many things to say in such a unique way. Also directed by Jonathan Demme, who most people would not associate with this kind of a film, but he actually was the director of Silence of the Lambs. So, this is a completely different movie that shows his rage. Yeah, no, it totally shows his rage as a director. Why did this film speak to you? And tell us about why you thought it was really a film that you wanted to deconstruct with me today.
Well, first of all, it's just a really great film. It has some very, very interesting characters, a wide range of emotions. There's all kinds of ethnic foods and clothing and a very interesting wedding, and they do some very unique things. And so it's just overall an enjoyable film. And then it gets into the whole addiction and recovery. And I felt like it gives a really accurate picture of like the dysfunctional family, the person with the addiction, turning everything into all about me. And then it has a lot of good recovery principles as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And something that I found was very unique about it was that the way that it was shot, it's sort of like a documentary style. It's not shot on high caliber like AGFA or Kodak film. It's a little bit lower resolution, more like what they would call cinema verite, like the camera is like moving through, and the editing is very, sometimes, the shots aren't perfect, which give it a documentary feel, which make the conversations and the conflicts that much more like real. Did you find that you were like sort of cringing through some of those scenes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes you feel like they're part of your family and you're kind of experiencing it. So it
Now,
was very
tell me about the scene that I think, for me, the scene that really struck me, and I think it's probably the reason that Anne Hathaway got nominated for Academy Award for Best Actress for this role. But there's a scene where she's at a 12-step meeting, telling the group about something that happened to her a long time ago. That's very, very tragic. That's my favorite scene. Do you want to speak to that scene, or do you have another scene that you thought had equal or more impact?
There's too many to count. But yes, that's definitely very impactful. Just seeing her raw emotion and what had happened with her brother, and the reactions of the other people there. People were very supportive and such. I also really enjoyed, I liked how in the beginning of the movie they had her go into Ethan's room, the brother that had died, and you know that there's something going on, but you don't know yet what. And so I thought it was a really nice foreshadowing before we get into, the meat and potatoes of the movie. And then, gradually the story kind of comes together about what happened with Ethan, that he drowned in an accident when she was very, very high on Percocet. And the culmination then of that story is when she's talking to the AA group, and then she goes on to confront her mother. Why did you let me take him when I was in that position? And it really kind of flips the narrative then, and mom has to answer to that.
Yeah, and the mom is played by Deborah Winger, who you don't see in movies that much anymore. She doesn't really act that much, but just her presence in that film, she's such, like, obviously an Academy Award winner. She's just an incredible actress, but she plays the mom in such an understated way. And that's what I think this is so remarkable about this film, is it sort of lulls you into a false sense of security. And there's so much simmering tension and potentially anger simmering beneath the surface. So when you see her in the film, when she comes in and the looks that she gives, she's very calm and together and everything. But then as time goes on, the story and the film really reveals that there's so much more. And that's what I think was unique about the film, is that it sort of brings out the idea that, with time, that the sins of the past, of some things that happened when somebody was high or using, yes, they happened in the past, but they still inform the present. And it really affected, like, the relationship that she had with her sister, and it took away some of the focus from her sister. And her sister is rightly resentful of that fact as well. And then at the same time, Anne Hathaway suffering from her own view of, like, how she's treated now that she's in recovery and has always been like the problem child. All those things came out in a great way. Let me ask you, did you find her to be kind of an annoying character?
Yeah, she was very negative, and just, everything that she had to say was about herself. I mean, immediately she is, here she's coming home to her sister's rehearsal dinner and wedding day. And she's like, I really wanted to be on my own. I really didn't want anybody else to be there. And what do you expect? The wedding's at their house. They're going to be there. And then the dysfunction shows through in the family, because even the stepmom's going, oh, there's only one person there right now. And you get there's like 15, 20 people there. It's like, just from the get-go, they're lying to each other and stuff. And then she's talking about herself. Well, I just got released from the big house, and I was sharpening my toothbrush into a shiv, and all this really melodramatic, making herself out to sound even worse than what the situation elicits. And so yeah, she was annoying. Annoying but lovable.
And she's got such a victimhood complex. At one point she says, I feel like, it's the Salem witch trial around here all the time.
Yeah.
But what I found really remarkable about that is that, that is, a person who's come out of, and I can say this from my own case, and maybe you can speak to yours, that when you come out of recovery and you feel like you've done the work, like you feel better, there's a sense that people treat you differently, that you're being watched, that everything is, you're being evaluated, you're kind of walking on eggshells. And you kind of want to tell people it's okay to just, can we go back? Can we rewind and go back to the way that we used to be? But then what they don't remember is that the way they used to be was when you were using, and that, things are different now. Everything is fundamentally different. Did you have a similar experience in your recovery?
Oh, absolutely. You know, everything inside me changed and I could feel it. And I knew what my intentions were, but nobody around me could tell. And they had heard promises before, when I had tried to quit on my own and that kind of thing. And so it's reasonable to expect that they're waiting. Oh, is this gonna mess with her? Or is this gonna be a problem for her? When I've gone on vacations with my parents, they're like, oh, people are going to be drinking. They're going to have a toast. Is this okay? And like, uh-oh. So like
Yeah,
I'm this fragile little thing that's going to, fall off the shelf or something. And
yeah.
and she
And
was
it's
going through
and
the same
that's
thing.
and I think that sometimes also that friction and that sort of the animosity and some of the feelings that are conjured up there, I think sometimes derail somebody's attempt to stay sober. Sometimes that can lead to relapse. And I think some of a reimmersion in family dynamics, as well intentioned as the family can be, but the guilt and recrimination that can come from that can actually cause a relapse. There's a scene where, like, after the fight with her mom, you know, uh, she's distraught. She's coming to terms with everything that she's done. Her sister's angry at her for sort of upstaging her wedding and making it all about her. She's really resentful at her mom, and she's driving home. And she also goes to a convenience store. And at that point, I didn't remember the film, but I was like, I know what she's going to do. She's going to do what I would have done. And what I probably did was that, like, if I'm encountering emotional problems, I'm just going to go get a six pack or whatever and just throw out the baby with the bathwater. Um, what do you think some strategies people could use when they're dealing with these kinds of family situations? I get this in my Smart Recovery meetings all the time, and I know that you're also a Smart Recovery meeting facilitator over at Above and Beyond. When you give advice to people as to how to deal with family dynamics, and not use them as a pretext to relapse again, what's some advice that you give them?
I think it's all about communication. It's all about communication and, explaining to people how things make you feel or how they affect you. Because when somebody treats you like you're so fragile and stuff, you start going, well, I'm fragile, you know, and you take on that identity. And when they remind you that you've caused problems and that kind of thing, then the whole shame thing starts coming up. And I know for myself, even when my family was good to me, sometimes that would create shame because I'd be like, oh, I traumatized these poor, wonderful people that love me, And shame is so dangerous. The number one relapse trigger is uncomfortable emotions. And what do you think one of the most uncomfortable emotions is? Shame. So yeah, to me, it's communicating, and then it's also um, talking with other people in recovery and getting encouragement from them, and just reminding yourself that they're in their own stage of healing from all of this as well. And so we kind of all have to give one another grace.
That is very well said. I mean, I think that's great advice. Well, in closing, if you were going to, let's say you're in an elevator and somebody is dealing with an addiction problem and you want to suggest this movie to them, give them the 5-second elevator pitch as to why they have to run out and see this movie to help them in their recovery.
Well, I think it does a really good job of just representing both addiction as well as recovery and the different dynamics that are in there. I feel like it does a good job with um, showing how this family that looks so perfect on the outside. You remember the dishwasher race machine scene? It was so much fun and so cool. Everybody goes, "Oh, I'd like to have a family like that." And yet they had all of these things that were unhealthy. So it's not always as it appears on the outside. And so I think that's an important message for people as well.
I agree. Yes, appearances deceive, and there's millions of families that you think everything's great. They're so wonderful. Nobody has any problems, and yet addiction touches many lives. Recovery, and a lot of people are in recovery. At least 10 or 20% of people are in some phase of recovery, or have are abstaining or whatever, but still dealing with their families. And trying to get along. And it's good to see the imperfections of a family, but how wonderfully at the end of the movie they come together and love conquers all in this context. I think it's so positive.
Even the sister turned so tender when she could have just been angry and outraged, and instead she took her in, and she was a mess, and she takes her in, she puts her in the tub, and she washes her down, and she's just as gentle and tender, and it was really, really sweet and special.
Yeah, it's a great scene. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for turning me on to this film. It's definitely, when I write more chapters for the book, this is definitely going to go in there. It's definitely going to be a workbook, a series of discussion questions, which I'll send to you, and I want your input on as well, since you're so familiar with the film, and I think your the movie meetup people at Above and Beyond would really enjoy seeing it, and I can't wait to see what they think as well. So thanks for joining us, and for all of you, this is Bonnie Kimpling from Above and Beyond Family Recovery Center. By the way, Above and Beyond is an incredible organization. If any of you are so inclined to donate money to help them do the incredible work that they do, I highly encourage that. I'll have a link to their website and how to donate on the description of this YouTube video. So, Bonnie, thanks again. Welcome to the Movie Club. And for all of you that are joining us, thank you for joining us on another episode of Recovery on Screen.